Hey, good evening, everybody. It is Steve with Real Progressives. We're going retro Steve and Ellis style tonight. Be Live is acting rather badly, so we're going to be doing just the split screen interview and none of the bells and whistles that we've grown used to loving and dealing with. As you notice, there is a little thing up here in the corner. That is our icon. That's a nice to have, but whatever. Anyway, tonight's discussion is going to be on the horrible evil of bigotry and how it has permeated the banking system and our understanding of the banking system, and how this just disgusting and vile conspiracy has permeated our politics and has now permeated our inability to actually deliver on a Green New Deal, because the parasites of the world would rather push bigoted narratives steeped in old anti-Jew, anti-Semitic, fables, and also modern ones brought on by Nazi Germany, no less. So, folks, we are going to delve into one of the favorite conspiracies of them all, the friggin' Rothschilds, and how that directly impacts lives today in austerity, you name it. So without further ado, let me bring on Sir Ellis. How are you tonight, sir?
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing all right. We had a situation where former presidential candidate for the Green Party, Cynthia McKinney, posted on her wall more of the drivel of the web of the octopus of the evil Jews, as they've taken over the world and they've taken over the monetary system and the global banking cartel and all the other things that conspiracy theory minded individuals who have no interest in actually learning how to save our world, who claim to want a Green New Deal but actually would rather talk about the evil Jews and the banking conspiracies. They have permeated politics, they have permeated the activism space, and they have permeated every single thought along the way, and it fuels so much of our willingness to accept austerity because of this fear porn and misguided nonsense about owning stock in the Federal Reserve and all the other nonsense, not understanding what the hell's going on, but feeling okay with speaking about something they don't understand, and then acting like they're cued in on some very, very special knowledge that only a select few are aware of, and then they go ahead and peddle this stuff, and guess what? We all bite our heads off and we stop pushing for new deals because we're afraid of money. And then all of a sudden, the people that are afraid of economics start saying, we got to end the money system, we got to end this, we got to kill everything, we got to do all this stuff, and there we are. We've got nowhere, we've got nothing. And no matter what, night in, night out, we preach this stuff, we teach this stuff, they still keep bringing this disgusting and worthless, fucking sick anti-Semitic bullshit. That's just got me out of my mind tonight, Ellis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that vile, vulgar, disgusting article that this person posted. Friend of mine tagged me in it this morning in that particular conversation. And the moment I saw that image connected with that article of the octopus with the tentacles crushing the Capitol Hill, that smacked of Nazi propaganda in the 1930s. Literally, because I have a heart condition, and I explained to Steve that I was experiencing a little bit of difficulty this week, seeing that and then thinking about what my response would be to that caused my heart to palpitate, and I had to back away from that article. It's really that offensive. It's a bunch of, what should one say, it's just anti-Semitic nonsense. In the end, let's just put it this way. In the end, it is not a message of hope, and no hope can be derived from reading that. Yet the Cynthia McKinney said, "Free your mind," by reading this article. So how shall that free my mind? How is anti-Semitism going to free my mind? Belief in fairy tales and the Jewish banking conspiracy. How's it going to free my mind? But most importantly, where's the message of hope? Doesn't exist. There is none. I don't mean to say most importantly in that sense as though it's more important than the message of hope. What I mean to say is that most importantly is in regards to what we're talking about. There's no message of hope in these conspiracy theories. And if you asked her what we could do, what are we supposed to do now that we know this information? It's been around for hundreds of years. This conspiracy's been around for hundreds of years. She acts like it's something new.
You know what's interesting?
What are we supposed to do, Stephen? Okay, so she says the Jews have come to take us away. The Jews control the Federal Reserve and don't forget the Bank of England too. Okay, and the RBA and the Bank of Japan, Bank of Canada. All right. What are we supposed to do now, Stephen, that we know this? Where's the message of hope? How do you fight that? You don't. You don't. All right? If the government is now powerless to stop it, why are you running for office? What are we to do? I guess just give up hope, sit here and eat our cornflakes?
Well, we're going to, of course, we'll end the evil Federal Reserve, and then we'll roll it into the Treasury. And then what happens, Ellis? What happens when we roll it into the Treasury? Then game, set, match. The Jews have taken over government. That will just make conspiracy theorists. The Federal Reserve is a private bank. Conspiracy theorists. This will make the Rothschilds conspiracy theorists and people like Cynthia McKinney happy. Because now it will continue their narrative. They will just look at everyone and they'll say, "Ha, you see? Now the Rothschilds and the Jews enter the final stage of their conspiracy. They've seized control of the U.S. Treasury. We are doomed." And that will be it. That's all you'll hear. Instead of the Rothschilds own the Federal Reserve, now it'll be the Rothschilds own the U.S. Treasury. That'll be it. Okay? It's never going to end. Ever.
It's never going to end. Yeah, and this end of Fed nonsense. I mean, I've beaten this thing into the ground. I've talked about central bank operations till I'm blue in the face. I've written about it till my fingers have fallen off. See, no fingers. And other people, tons of other people have written on the same things. Plenty of academic literature out there that shows that the Fed is neither a private entity nor is it in command of the U.S. government nor owned by the Jews, as they want to say. But people refuse to read it. People like Ron Paul. Ron Paul's a very interesting character. You know that, Steve?
Oh, absolutely.
Here we have a libertarian who hates government. I mean, he absolutely hates it. He thinks everything should be privatized, from universal, from healthcare. Healthcare should be privatized. Everything should be privatized. But when it comes to the Federal Reserve, he's angry because it's a private bank. He wants to end it. So, no hypocrisy there, surely. Can we just get to the point of this? Can we just all sit down and admit that this conspiracy nonsense about the Federal Reserve being a private bank is just designed to obstruct progress? Because you have a hole in your knowledge. You have a hole in your knowledge, okay? Whether that be a lack of a formal education or, just studying the stuff in general on your own. There's something that you cannot understand about central banking that's very hard for you to grasp, okay? And rather than ask questions of people who know the answers or go to university and try to get the answers, it's much easier to listen to a story, a fiction, that's written in a language that people can easily digest about drama, 007 drama, and Mission Impossible storyline about the Fed being controlled by private banks and Jewish people. It's much easier to understand. And so now you can fill your knowledge gap. that little missing piece of the puzzle. So, but I've got bad news for people like that. Central banking operations is not as easy as a connect the dots activity book for kindergartens. Okay. It's just not that simple. All right. We just need to get past this point.
So let me ask you, Alice, one of the things that has been difficult is, as we talk through this stuff, the first thing that comes up naturally is the owning stock in the private banking cartel system, right? The 6% stock. Explain this, please. It is so, Warren Mosler explained it in
right.
we're dealing with. I've heard Rowan explain it, and you've explained. So go ahead and explain.
Well, if Rowan has explained it, you've got a significant, in-depth, detailed answer. So you don't need another one from me. So I'll give you the simple, straightforward answer. And that is, the stock is not the same as stock that you'd buy on the stock market through your broker. It's not like Apple stock. You don't take ownership of the Federal Reserve by owning stock. What it is a savings account that the bank is required to put on deposit with the Federal Reserve if it wishes to become a member of the Federal Reserve System. That's it. It is a deposit account. You put money into it. The bank puts money into it. It's a savings account. Nothing more than that. It does not give the bank special voting rights. It doesn't give the bank special rights that you would see given to a shareholder of Apple or General Motors. This is not a very hard concept to understand. Okay, it denotes membership in the Federal Reserve System, and so since J.P. Morgan Chase is based in New York, it falls under the New York Federal Reserve Bank. But then there's also the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank and the Minneapolis Fed. What? It's just a savings account. That's it. What else is there to say about it? It's just a savings account that's required.
Well, see,
by law.
Here's the problem, and this is the problem. I don't care if it was 20. Let's say hypothetically they got a 6% kickback or maybe an 8% kickback every year. Let's just say hypothetically they got an 8% hypothetical kickback, which isn't true. But let's just say they did. Mm-hmm. I am trying to understand why people would allow people to die while we're pushing for a Green New Deal, while we're pushing to save the environment, while we're trying to get single payer, while we're trying to do any of the things that we claim as progressives to give a fuck about. Why in the world we would sit there and focus on this very, very minuscule, because I think it was like $91 billion was taken in by the Fed or whatever. They gave the Treasury $88.5 billion back in terms of, and it's just unfathomable to me that we have to ever speak of this again, but yet the people in our midst are more steeped in this bullshit than saving one single life. And every time I see it, I know that I see somebody who has horrific priorities, who is absolutely sidelined and is attempting to sideline others from being effective in saving people from austerity.
First of all, Congress created the Federal Reserve System. That's it. That should tell you all you need to know. All right? But more relative to this 6% crap. The Federal Reserve returns profits to the U.S. Treasury. The Federal Reserve is designed by Congress intentionally to be self-funding. It's a central bank, for frick's sake. It has to emit high-powered money. So it's self-funding, okay? And the banks get 6% by banks taking their own money, creating a savings account in the Federal Reserve and depositing this money, all right? They get a 6% return. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury gets the profits returned from that the Federal Reserve makes. It returns them to the U.S. Treasury.
They're not operated at profit. They're not operated at profit.
Right. That's the whole point that what we're trying to say here. Now, let me ask you this. So let's be clear. The banks have a savings account. By law, they're forced to have a savings account at the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, if they wish to be a member. And they get a 6% dividend, as they call it. Could you explain to me, please, how this 6% dividend prevents the U.S. government from spending for full employment and the public purpose?
It's impossible to answer that question.
It doesn't have anything to do with Dick. Okay, it has nothing to do with anything. It does not constrain the federal government in any way, shape, or form. And these people who say, well, you know, every time the federal government uses fiscal policy to spend, it has to borrow from the Federal Reserve. That's a bunch of hogwash. It's a bunch of horseshit. No such thing occurs. The Federal Reserve cannot tell Congress no. When Congress wants to spend, it will friggin' spend. If tomorrow Congress said Steve Grumbine should be given $10,000, and the U.S. Treasury goes to disperse those newly created $10,000 into Steve Grumbine's account, the Federal Reserve must credit that account, must have that money. End of story. The Federal Reserve cannot look at Congress and say no, because Congress is in charge of fiscal policy. Congress is in charge. Okay, not the Federal Reserve. It's just silly. And all the Federal Reserve in the end tends to be, all the Federal Reserve is in the end is just this, as Warren Mosley says, it's just this giant scorekeeper. It's just keeping track of all the dollars, and that's it. Okay, that's it. End of story. It cannot, on its own, create trillions of dollars and give it to the Rothschilds and say, there you are. Okay, it cannot on its own create trillions of dollars and just walk up to the CEO of JP Morgan Chase and say, here you go, take it, go buy a yacht. It doesn't work that way. You need Congress for that. So.
It's unfathomable to me, Ellis, mainly because ultimately anybody that says this stuff, Wade says, why not direct issue and eliminate the Federal Reserve and the bonds?
Well, you see, this is the question, because the Federal Reserve is so convoluted. I mean, central banking seems to be convoluted, but the Federal Reserve is extra convoluted. All right, it's extra confusing, and people say, Jesus Christ, why don't we just get rid of all this shit and just directly spend and screw the bonds as well? And you know, that's all well and good, but the thing is, you don't have to go through all of this deep restructuring and this deep trashing of the system in order to get it to function right. Okay? And in the end, look, the problem is people don't understand MMT. I've seen all week long now, there's been this series of Green Party people talking about it being an ideology. Oh my God. I can't. MMT is not an ideology, okay? MMT just describes what already is. And people have it in their minds, and I'm going to be blunt here, people have it in their minds that long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was this system that we had, and everyone watched I Love Lucy, and the system that we had spent, and everybody had a job, and pay was good, and prices were low, and all things were wonderful, and then the corporations and the evil bankers and them, they came in, and they destroyed that good system, and they replaced it with a bad system, you see, the bad system. And so we're living under this bad system, and we have to tear it apart, shred it, and replace it with another good system. And this is just puerile nonsense, because the system that the 1% is using right now to redistribute GDP to itself, okay, that's using it to suppress wages, that system just needs to be turned in the opposite direction. That's all. You just go in the opposite direction with it. And suddenly it results in full employment and the public purpose. It's all about macroeconomic policy and the government's fiscal policy and how it's directed. And right now, fiscal policy is in the shithouse. They don't use it except for the benefit of the military and the 1%. And everybody else has to live with monetary policy. Okay? But if we relied exclusively on fiscal policy to do the job, and the government directed fiscal policy in the appropriate manner, befitting a currency issuer, then it would spend for full employment and the public purpose. And that is it. And there it is, and it would be doing its job correctly. You don't have to destroy the system or tear down the system or end the Fed or dig up the system and turn it over like a garden, like you're tilling a garden, and get all the weeds down underground and kill it all, and then start over with greenbacks. You don't have to do that. You just have to do the opposite of what's happening right now. That's it. Because that's so, it's kind of like the Force, you know? MMT is like, the system is like the Force. There's the good side and there's the bad side. You can use the Force for good or evil here. Well, right now it's being used for evil. So you just need to use the Force for good. And so you just got to go the opposite direction. You know, nothing to tear down. Nothing. It's just a big waste of time. And a lot of this comes from lack of knowledge, you know?
You know, the lack of knowledge wouldn't be such a problem for me, Ellis. I think the lack of knowledge is understandable. I mean, they've done everything they can to obfuscate the problems and obfuscate the solutions. What is a problem, though, is when people sit there and go, like one of our people who watches our shows all the time, who I'm not trying to put her down, but I'm going to say this point blank. She goes, well, the U.S. gives Israel a lot of money. We don't give Israel money per se. Israel does its own thing as well. Israel is getting favors, they're getting buying contracts, they're getting access to different things, just like many of our partners are. Okay,
Sure.
And whether you like that, that's a wholly political argument about whether or not we should or should not support Israel. That is a political argument, and you know what? People, good people, can disagree on that solution. What they cannot disagree on and still remain a good person is the truth of the underlying monetary system. Because once you start peddling the conspiracy theories, you've lost the high ground. You are no longer treading the level course of being a good person. You're now being a bigot. Okay? And that's what we're trying to show you, is even if you're an accidental bigot, you're nonetheless a bigot. Okay? Get it? This is like every bit as bad as any other form of bigotry out there, because this has been going on for centuries. And Hitler fanned the flames of this stuff to off 8 million Jews in World War II. This is the same shit. And if you don't get that, shame the fuck on you. I'm serious.
Yeah. I think what it means to say is that you're falling. What's happening is people who buy into it, they're falling for propaganda. That's what they're doing, and it's just a bunch of people who they're out with a particular agenda that they want to get to. They want to see their agenda become reality, and they're willing to use any propaganda, any technique to gain enough momentum to see that agenda become that reality. It's just that simple, and it's vile. None of it's true whatsoever. But back to the thing about bonds, the point about the bonds is, again, you don't have to end the Fed to do that. All you have to do is order the Fed, the Federal Reserve, to maintain a zero interest rate policy. You can do the same thing in England, in the UK, with the Bank of England. You order the Federal Reserve to maintain a zero interest rate policy. And if you do that, then you can stop issuing bonds altogether. You don't have to issue treasury bonds, you spend. The reason why is because the purpose of the treasury bonds is to establish and maintain a particular interest rate by the government. Okay, the Federal Reserve sets this target interest rate, all right, and it has to defend that. But competition for excess reserves in the banking system, okay, competition, sometimes banks have are deficient of reserves, and some have a surplus. And so the surplus, banks want to lend their reserves on the interbank market to banks who are deficient. This competition for this excess reserves drives the overnight rate down. So in the case of the federal funds market, this overnight rate will fall, and it'll interfere with the Fed's target rate unless it intervenes. And how it intervenes, outside of paying interest on reserves, would just say how it intervenes in the context of treasury bonds, is it takes the treasury bond, it goes in there and exchanges the treasury bond for the liquid reserves. And that's it, and it halts the competition. Okay, that's the purpose of the treasury bond right there. Well, you don't need that. You can pay interest on reserves, and it has the same effect. Okay, Except in this case, the national debt would not sit in securities accounts at the Fed, it would sit in reserve accounts at the Fed. Okay? But there's a more efficient way. You just maintain a zero interest rate policy. So you simply order the Fed to maintain a zero interest rate policy. That means there's nothing to defend anymore. And the Federal Reserve doesn't require the bonds to defend that target rate. Guess what? You don't need to issue them. And that's the whole point. The Treasury bonds serve only. Here's the entire purpose of a Treasury bond, or a gilt in the UK, is the government will issue these when it wishes to establish and maintain a particular interest rate. It does not issue these to cover deficits. It does not issue these to borrow money so it can afford to deficit spend, is what I'm saying. Okay, in simple layperson's terms. The government only issues Treasury bonds to establish and maintain a particular interest rate. And as a byproduct of that, they become savings accounts that pay interest for people who buy the bonds. Okay? The central bank just needs them to defend a target interest rate. That's it. Well, guess what? You don't really have to do that. Like I said, interest on reserves or the zero interest rate policy. So basically, like I've said many times in this program before, bonds are an anachronism. They're the crank on the front of a Model T Ford. Okay, that's what they are. And you're trying to stick it on a Ferrari and call it useful. Treasury bonds have no use in modern monetary economy for a sovereign currency issuing government.
So Wade is suddenly saying, you mean eliminate the 6%? No, we're talking about the interest rates. They sell these different monetary instruments.
How many people died last year from lack of health care, Steve?
Exactly. I want to know. I'm going to dig it up. Hold on. I can pull that up.
Did you know that 1 in 5 suicide is unemployment related? You see, I'm talking about something that's more important than the 6% figure. Okay? Well, we're talking about the 6% figure, people are dying. Okay? I don't care if the bank gets 6% or it gets 0%. This is an operational aspect. Okay? That has absolutely zero. I'm going to say this again. It has absolutely 0% to do with the government's ability to have full employment through a job guarantee, to have universal health care, an NHS-style healthcare system in the US. It has nothing to do, 0% to do with sustainable output and energy. It has 0% to do with tuition-free university. Okay? 0% to do with it. All right? If that 6% interest that's paid to holders of savings accounts at the Federal Reserve were that significant, explain to me why the U.S. military rivals the Klingon Empire.
Yeah, this is exactly the point. Ellis, I'm so glad you said that. I could look up all these stats while we're online. Somebody threw out 40,000, et cetera.
Yeah, I can tell you this right now.
Exactly. I'm telling you this right now. I have people telling me, why are you focusing on economics when African Americans are getting shot in the street by police officers and others? And the bottom line is that you want to solve these problems. Give the people access to opportunity and freedom and stop making artificial scarcity that causes scapegoating and causes desperation and then causes murder and all other forms of disease come out of the woodworks. And people want to say, well, how is that? It's like, it's so fucking simple. It's so fucking simple. I believe the left has become full of charlatans. I want to start asking these lefties that sit there and say this stuff, do you want a Green New Deal? Or do you want to be the next guest on Alex Jones' show? Do you want a Green New Deal? Or do you want to be able to write for Global Research CA? Do you want to be a Green New Deal person saving lives, or do you want to be out there shaking hands with a bunch of fruitcakes that literally don't know anything about anything, but over and over and over again come up with this bullshit and say it as if it's fact, and then nonstop, this is all we talk about, sidelining? I mean, you talk about sidelining. The left of this country is absolutely a shameful wreck of conspiracy bullshit. The left in this country has got a lot of blood on its hands. I would say the left in this country is every bit to blame as the GOP, even though they're not in power, because they choose to sideline themselves with bullshit. Bullshit. And I'm telling you right now, there's been so many days, Ellis, I've seen you type on your board, I'm retiring or retirement. You're just like ready to retire. And
I've retired. I retired a while back in 2010. But when I say that, I mean, I'm thinking about retiring from this too.
Absolutely.
My health, my health can't take much more.
These people are so utterly devoid of willingness to learn. I genuinely want to sit there and stare them in the eye and look and see if I see them flinch and say, do you actually want a Green New Deal, or do you want to be a conspiracy theorist? Do you actually meaningfully want to save lives, or are you just sitting here playing fucking games? Because I'm telling you right now, the vast majority of the left belongs on as the next guest on Alex Jones. And Alex Jones is a wingnut righty. We're not talking about somebody who's actively trying to help people. We're talking about a batshit crazy Illuminati chasing, friggin' Bilderberg slurping fruit nut that is absolutely out of his mind and absolutely taking the left wing with him. Even though he may not be the specific, there's 100 other of them, right? I mean, you look at this, think about this. The Green Party has the AMI team. The AMI is not anti-Semitic. But the things they peddle, about the Federal Reserve, fuel those people who are
fractional reserve banking. The myth of fractional reserve banking. AMI claims that fractional reserve banking exists when it doesn't. So it's attempting with using the sovereign money style proposal to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And in the process, what it's doing is it's attracting these end the Fed people that are Rothschild's conspiracy theorists and anti-Semitic people. It's attracting them to the Green Party is what it's doing. Like I said, like you just said, AMI is not anti-Semitic. It's not an anti-Semitic organization at all. It's just this. It's about this sovereign money proposal here. What you're saying is, and let's be very clear. Nutty people smell that and they hear, what? Banks? Oh, banks create 97% of all of our dollars. Incorrect, but nevertheless. Oh, well, the Green Party seems to be on the right track. And then the next thing you know, there's a bunch of anti-Semitic bullshit going on in the Green Party. Cynthia McKinney. Okay? I'm not saying that's AMI related. I'm just saying, you have to be careful because when you start peddling when you start promoting these so-called solutions to problems that don't exist, it whets the appetite of people who are more interested in drama than they are solving problems. All right? And you're going to end up attracting these people when the last thing that you want is these people who are not interested in solutions involved. You don't want to grab onto these people and say, come on, create a voter base for us. That's crazy. Now, I want to make it very clear. I'm not saying that AMI is causing this or any of the proposals or the Green Party saying, well, AMI has a point. I'm not saying that has anything to do with anti-Semitism or anything. What I'm saying is the idea that banks are in charge over the government and they have seized control of the government's ability to create money attracts these crazy conspiracy theorists and these anti-Semitists like catfish bait, like a catfish to a catfish bait. You know what I mean? They're like, and then the next thing you know, if you leave your door open, they're going to get into your house and they're going to infect it. So it's best to not sit there and just adhere to some silly state. It's best to educate yourself. There is so much information available on this. MMT is not an ideology. It is reality. It just explains reality. That's it. So if you are sitting there saying to me or anybody else, MMT is just another competing ideology with AMI and blah, 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 like that, what you're really saying is reality is competing with neoliberal nonsense. That's what you're saying. And we choose the neoliberal nonsense over reality. All right?
Yeah.
So if you want to do that, go for it. But, you know, you're wasting people's lives and time by doing so.
So Rob Baxter brings up a point, and I want to say this too, because, you know, Lee Camp, I've been on a panel with Lee Camp, been on a panel with he and Noah Changa, and Lee Camp has not really brought in MMTers onto his show. He's not even discussed MMT, but he's brought Richard Wolff onto his show, and he's now brought the Zeitgeist people onto his show. And he talks constantly about jailing the banksters, but he doesn't recognize that the real problem comes in Congress. Yeah. And Lee's got a huge audience. The guy's a good guy. I mean, but he's given to this stuff, and we need to get Lee Camp waking up about this, because this is stuff that is really, really destroying us. I mean, it really is. He means well. I know he does, but this stuff is just low-hanging fruit within the conspiracy ranks that, honest to God, man, it's time to bring the MMT folks on there. And he has been resistant. There's been people that have been pinging him for a long time trying to get any of the MMTers on there. He has not reached out to any, and to my knowledge, I don't need to be the one. I am not that guy. He can pick a bunch of them. There are a ton of them ready to go at any moment's notice. Some of them are even in the Sanders Institute, like Stephanie Kelton and others. I don't know why he hasn't chosen to do that. It's time for Lee Camp to up his game and bring MMT into his dogma. Anyway,
so, you know, the banker should be jailed. Well, I've said it many times. I don't know any MMT economist or activist or advocate who says no way we shouldn't jail bankers. Yes, we should. They should be sent up for life. As a matter of fact, a lot of these, and I do not care how much time intervenes. Whenever we get into the position where we can prosecute them, they should be prosecuted. Amen. I don't care if 25 years goes by. But what I'm also trying to tell you is, whilst the bankers are a problem because they buy their friends in Congress and people like Larry Summers, who are just so awesome, and people like Rob Rubin, who are just so awesome, when they have friends like this in high places and they buy politicians, you get deregulation. When you get bank deregulation, you get funny business, and you get fun little schemes that Wall Street banks like to come up with, right? All right. The problem is people fail to notice that you have to go to the government and beg it and plead with it by giving its politicians some money, its high priests, okay? And then once the high priests get your prayers, they hear your prayers, and then they get your little offering to the god called the federal government, then they simply bend the federal government to your will. And if you're a bankster, your will is deregulation, right? Your will is to allow over-the-counter derivatives to just run wild, okay? All right? But you see, you've got to understand, that's government, okay? Government's in charge. And only government can reverse this process. So if we go and we jail every banker that was involved, which we should do, this will not stop the problem. It won't stop. It won't stop people. Because you still have to regulate these banks. This is a point that I want to make right now, since we brought up AMI. Positive money in the UK has told me on many occasions. I've had many discussions with people. And it's one of them, they always keep telling me this: bank regulation has failed. Okay. Here's the honest truth. You don't get to deregulate banks. And then when you get a financial crisis, claim that bank regulation doesn't work. See how that works? Very simple. We need to have exceptionally hard, strict regulation on banks by government. And that regulation should encompass two things. Banks should only be allowed to operate the payment system, number one. And number two, they should only be allowed to lend to people who are actually genuinely creditworthy, and that determination should be based upon their ability to repay that loan. Banks should not be allowed to do anything else. And if you regulate them that way, banking becomes boring, more boring than insurance. Okay? And that's what banking should be. It should be just as boring as insurance. So there's your problem in a nutshell. Government is the problem. Yes. Criminals in the private sector are the problem. Yes, they go and they pay politicians. Got it. But remember who it is that they have to pay to get what they want. Okay? It's Congress or it's Parliament. So there's the problem. So we have to, if government is the problem, government is the solution in this case. So you just have to reverse what's happened.
So, one of the things that I want to make a point of, Gabriel, who is no longer with us, said, who are these idiots that are critiquing the Green Party? We happen to love the Green Party. I'm going to be actually speaking in New Jersey at their convention on July 13th, and I just had David Cobb on the other night, and I'll have Margaret Flowers on next week.
Who said we hate the Green Party?
Oh, this guy who just hears what he wants to hear. That's shit. See, this is why we get nowhere in this movement. People are full of, how dare you critique anything?
The people that can't read, the people that can't, that are so deluded by neoliberalism, they can't read English anymore or understand it. They only hear, if you say the federal government is the currency issuer and as such does not require tax collections in order to fund its spending. The only thing they hear is don't tax the rich. Even though you didn't mention the rich and they, who are you to tell me we shouldn't tax the rich? That's the same type of person. If you say the Green Party is promoting AMI nonsense, who are you to criticize the Green Party? You must not be progressive. I'm talking about the economics here. I'm talking about currency analysis. I'm talking about economics. I'm not, I do not understand how people, it's just some people are so they're so immersed in politics, they can't think clearly anymore. They're unable to think. It's really interesting.
It's frustrating, Ellis, because, for me, I desperately, just so everybody understands my MO, and I'll take Ellis off of here just for a second so he doesn't have to sucker through this. Combine friendly here. So just so you all understand, I am a non-affiliated voter. I'm a true independent and a real progressive, okay? My goal here is to find a home that preaches proper economics, that is willing to take proper economics so it can enable a Green New Deal. If you are not pushing and are not, it's not even pushing, if you're not in acceptance of what MMT is today, in other words, if you're not in acceptance of what is actually happening in the federal financing, you're out there peddling myths. If you can't break down the way dollars travel through the system and you say incorrect things, you can't lead me anywhere. You cannot lead me anywhere. I refuse to follow an economic illiterati of any flavor at all. I don't care whether you have the best sensibilities in the world. I don't care if you're a great tap dancer. Hell, I don't even care if you're a good family man or woman. If you don't know economics, you're not leading me anywhere. And if you peddle myths and legends, you can't lead me anywhere. So my goal, by going to the Green Party National Convention, is to, in fact, impart truth about modern monetary theory. My goal for going to these different places and engaging the Modern Money Network to go out to these places and engaging other groups to engage these other groups is to ensure that we have a landing place of people that understand proper economics. If you're busy peddling lies, myths, and legends, and all this other stuff that sidelines us, you are not worthy of the progressive movement, and I will not join you. So I am actively trying to assist any of the progressive movement out there that want to get on board and be in the right place so that we can actually have a Green New Deal. And that's it. That's it. You hear it? If you get that, you'll understand where we're at. I want the Green Party to be successful, but I want them to have proper economics so that we can actually make something happen. Without it, there's nothing they can do for me. Anyway, let me bring Ellis back on now.
And you said something a little bit earlier about racial tensions, if you recall. It was about 15 minutes ago. And I wanted to address that directly. How does economics, or shall we say macroeconomics correctly, how does macroeconomics and MMT address, knowledge of MMT, excuse me, address racial tensions? How does it resolve this problem? And the answer is very simple, if you would only be willing to listen. Studies, scientific studies now, have shown conclusively that one of the effects of long-term unemployment is increasing racial tensions. Other ones are suicide, increased crime, okay, increased domestic violence, rises in physical and mental illness, whole slew of social ills. One of them, though, is increased racial tensions. And the reason why is because if you spend 40 years keeping people deliberately unemployed, long term, and couple that with wage suppression and bad economies and persistent recessions, okay, and poverty increasing as GDP continues to redistribute to capital, right, and private debt expands, indebting the populace to the point where they can't move, okay, you're going to have, over a long period of time, you're going to get people wanting to know who to blame. And people are going to get irritated and they're going to get angry, all right? And violence will occur, and anger at other people will occur. And you'll get these little racists that come out of, like I've said before, underneath the little rocks, and they begin telling people who to blame. And people start listening to them, okay? And tensions begin to rise, all right? Understanding of MMT means that we understand that business is not in charge of the unemployment rate. It doesn't control it because it's merely a currency user. The market is a currency user. The currency issuer is the federal government. It's the national government that issues the currency, okay? The federal government in the United States and in Australia controls the unemployment rate 100% on the macro level of the economy. That's it. And it does that through net spending, deficit spending. So, if involuntary unemployment exists, it's because the deficit is too low to support full employment. All right? It's really that simple. So, the federal government is the entity that will create unemployment, and it is the only entity that can eliminate it. So what happens when we understand that? And we understand that this government is not revenue constrained, so taxes, federal taxes, are not revenue for the government. And we understand the national debt's nothing but a bunch of savings accounts, all right? And we understand what I just said a few minutes ago about bonds being issued by the government exclusively to establish and maintain a particular interest rate, and that's it. When we understand all this, we understand that the government is only constrained by the economy's real ability to produce goods and services. Then we understand that if we produce full employment, if we spend for full employment, and the public purpose, universal healthcare, tuition-free university, green energy, as you call it, infrastructure modernization, right? Shift towards sustainable output. And with full employment, we're talking about a federal job guarantee, all right? And we introduce a situation of prosperity and then maintain that prosperity in perpetuity. Anger drops because tension drops, because fear drops, because hopelessness becomes hope. All right? And as the racial tensions decrease, the racial tensions will decrease as prosperity increases. That's why the economics is so very, very, very important. That's why an understanding of what we say, what MMT is trying to tell you, what MMTists are trying to tell you, is so important, is because the solution to the majority of these social ills that you see today are all based in macroeconomics. It's macroeconomics, an incorrect macroeconomic policy. It's neoliberalism that has created the social nightmare through economics. Okay? And the only way to counter that and eradicate those social ills is through the economic channel. You have to reverse what's been done. Okay? If you bring about prosperity and sustain it indefinitely, the racial tensions will drop, the suicide rates will drop. With universal health care, physical illness and mental illness rates will drop. Okay? a whole host of social ills will become non-existent or so minuscule they're insignificant. Okay, and they can be very, very easily addressed. All right. But right now, what you have, because of bad macroeconomic policy that's been going on for 40 years, which is called neoliberalism, is the reason why you see society is in such upheaval. Okay? That's why. So if you want to fight back with neoliberalism, you can't do it by some social method. You know, you're going to have to attack it because it's an economic machine. It's an economic powerhouse. It's a machine that is devouring people with austerity. It's devouring the social welfare systems of nations around the world. It's privatizing vast swaths of state-owned property, okay, for the benefit of a very small few individuals, right? That is the entire reason why you have all of these tensions and rising crime rates. This is precisely why you need the macroeconomic message. You need an understanding. You need to understand that the 1% already understand that the government cannot go broke in terms of its own currency, that it does not tax in order to pay for anything. Okay, it doesn't go out and collect dollars so that it can spend them. And it doesn't borrow from China because it's broke. When you understand this, you're in a position to fix these problems that you're talking about. Until then, these problems will just continue. You cannot defeat neoliberalism by playing by the rules of neoliberalism. You just can't do it. Okay, neoliberalism defines the rules of the game, and then you say, okay, and you try and play by those rules, you're going to lose. Because neoliberalism has already stacked the game against you. And if you think that neoliberalism would ever, ever, ever tell you the truth and say exactly what would kill neoliberalism and clue you in on what you need to do to kill it, you're delusional. Okay? Don't think that the answer is right there, because it's not. Because if you do not understand that how a sovereign currency issuing government works and how a modern monetary economy works, then you're steeped in neoliberalism, and you're trying to fight neoliberalism on neoliberalism's chosen battlefield and with its rules. And you can't beat neoliberalism like that. It just can't be done. You got to do the exact opposite of what it says is the truth. Okay, I'll say this one last time. This is neoliberalism. This is neoliberalism ideology right here. It's neoliberal ideology. The national government has no money of its own, and therefore it must tax and borrow to fund its spending. Its budget is just like a household's. There it is. If you believe that, then you believe in neoliberal opinion. You hold neoliberal opinion, and you have no hope of defeating or even challenging neoliberalism. That's just it. End of story.
Very good, Ellis. So let me ask you real quickly, because I think that this is what I think I want to focus on for the remainder of our broadcast, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that is that we have talked about this many times, but for me, real progressives, before we get to MMT even, right, we have who we are as people. We have desires. And we come to the table and we say, how can we solve these problems? How can we make life better for one another? How can we unfuck the world, quite frankly? And so when we come to that, that's priority number one. That defines who we are. Those are our priorities, okay? And when you think about who and what you are, and you think about where you stand and what you care about, then you understand the underlying truth that modern monetary theory brings you to. And when you marry truth with character and integrity, and you bring about a genuine care for the 99%, we can do tremendous things. Let me tell you something. If I was a Republican and I was sitting there with a bunch of other Republicans and I was talking about the things that mattered to me, as bad as this may sound to you all, I could make the underlying truths of modern monetary theory work to meet our agenda as well, because MMT is not political. It simply is the truth of the underlying mechanisms. And we are telling you as real progressives how this underlying truth can be leveraged to immediately begin activating on the New Deal politics that we all claim to give a shit about. And so that's what's so important. So Ellis, let me ask you a question. In your mind, why do you suppose people that claim to want to stop the pain, do you think they don't believe we can do this? Do you think they've given up? Do you think the conspiracy theories are the give-up strategy to throw in the towel? Or what do you think is driving that?
They're not desperate enough. That's it. I mean, you can sit there and come up with a million different answers, but I can show you people in the United Kingdom of this last election who are very desperate people. People were coming to MMT in droves. The message spreading all over the United Kingdom during this election alone. You know, people, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more, please, please, tell me more about this. You know why? Hope. Hope. And apparently, a lot of people in the US aren't desperate enough to have any use for hope. They still are comfortable enough that they can involve themselves in drama and dream their little dreamy dream. You understand what I mean by that?
Oh, I do.
Okay. So right now, lots of people in the United States are within a sort of a comfort zone where they have the luxury of having enough time during their day to sit back and scream, Cheeto in chief, you see, and play little games of drama about the Federal Reserve being a private bank that has the US government begging at its knees. Yeah, there's plenty of time for all of this drama. But when you experience the level of austerity that the Tories inflicted on the people of the United Kingdom over the last 7 years, okay, when you witness people that are literally dying of terminal illness in their final days of life, you witness them being declared fit for work and having the benefits removed. Good, no more benefit. Okay, when you witness people die because of austerity, all right, when you see that, and then you imagine that kind of a consequence, that kind of a situation being imposed upon you, okay, I think you can understand the desperation and the desperate need for a message of hope. Is there anything to believe in? Yeah, MMT is a message of genuine hope. Why? Because it just simply explains how the monetary system actually works. Hyper accurately, I might add. There are no logical inconsistencies. Okay? It is a message of hope. Why is that? Because what MMT implies is that full employment, abolishment of poverty, fully funded national health care, universal health care for all, infrastructure modernization, high-speed rail and solar energy, and all of these wonderful things are easily achievable as long as the government has the real resources available. And guess what? The governments of the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, to name a few, all have enough real resources to meet the needs of the entire population. That's a message of hope. See, it's hope. So when you're desperate enough for a message of hope, and when you become desperate enough, you start looking for hope. And hope sells. And MMT is a message of genuine hope, because what it implies is an end to the suffering, righting of wrongs, end to death toll of austerity, the end of brutality, and the end of being robbed blind of your birthright by capital. The thing called neoliberalism that should die, and should die violently. Yeah. But it's a message of hope. That's it. And hope sells to a desperate populace.
You know, Ellis, that statement that you just made about hope, it to me is extremely powerful. And, you know, I kid you not, there are days where I feel so sick inside, so absolutely hopeless, not because of the system. So I get the system. I feel hopeless because our movement would rather peddle conspiracies. I feel desperate, sadness, deep, horrific sadness, because they would rather peddle lies than embrace truth. Because if they embrace truth and they began truly pressuring their congresspeople, if they truly began writing to the editor boards of their local paper, if they truly took over town halls and they started going and taking to the streets and really meaning it, we could save our planet and make it inhabitable for our children. They say they care about the environment. I don't see evidence. I see a lot of whining. I see an awful lot of local protest about things, but not solutions. The solutions are not embraced. And that causes me such a deep level of despair. You know, you know what? You told me something one day, and I don't know if you remember this or not. And I talked to Warren about this, and he kind of reiterated the same thing, but you said it very clearly. He says, Steve, you're one person. You can only do what you can do. It requires everyone to do their part as well.
Yeah, we do what we're all different, but we all do our part.
And the idea that I was carrying this sack on my back, like I had to bear the weight of this, was too much. It was breaking me. It was destroying me.
Yeah.
It was absolutely destroying me because I realized what's at stake here.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about, it's like watching a child falling from a window and not being able to catch that small child and feeling that despair. That is almost an intensity level that I can't fathom. I don't think human beings are built to feel that much intensity for that long a time. There was no downtime from it either. It's like the pressure of watching people ignore the solutions, to peddle conspiracies, and watching that child falling from the window. The people jumping out of the tower, the people dying at Grenfell Tower, for example, perfect. You envision this, and it's all austerity based. It's all.
You know exactly why those people died. You know exactly why.
Absolutely.
You know what? And it's not because, oh, well, something malfunctioned. Oh, well, this happened. Oh, well, that. And you hear the Tories right now. Let's not politicize Greenfield. Why not? It's all fucking politics. That's the reason why these people are dead. Austerity. End of story. All right? Something that was totally unnecessary resulted in the deaths of all of these people all at once. Something totally unnecessary. And these ridiculous, these vile little Tories have peddled this myth that Labour caused the financial crisis in the UK, and now the government's broke and it has no money, so it's going to have to, get its financial house in order, get its finances correct. So we're going to have to kill half the population to do it. Sorry. It's a bunch of bullshit. Totally unacceptable horse shit. But now there's hope. Hope is rising out of that. And if people say, you sat there and you said, I can't carry this on my back. I can't carry this on my back. Well, what you're talking about, Steve, is hope taken to an extreme level. That's interesting. Because when you see when people hear about MMT, and then they listen to someone explain how the system works, and the light bulb finally goes on in their head, they have instant hope. Just add water. You know what I'm talking about? It's just instant. And it changes that person from despair to so filled with hope they want to go out, and some of them want to go out and immediately try and save the world. And then they realize that they can't do it all themselves, and they think they're doing it all themselves, and they're not. There is an entire community that is worldwide. It's international. I'm not just look. I'm sitting here in the United States, all right, And over there in Australia, you have Stephen Hale, you have Bill Mitchell, yeah. And in the UK, you've got people worldwide here that understand this. And they're all in the same position that you are. They're trying to move forward and change the narrative and fight neoliberalism. And the fact is, Stephen, we're going to win. But it's over. The war is actually over. I don't care. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I see these people talking about, I feel so hopeless because so many people just won't. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. Universal health care is coming to the US. The NHS will be saved in the UK. Okay? The social welfare system of Australia will be secured. There will be full employment abound worldwide. Okay? A job guarantee is coming. Infrastructure modernization, green energy, solar roads, right? Solar energy, solar collection, conversion from oil to sustainable energy is coming. Tuition-free university is coming. We're no longer going to be putting a price on something like education. Okay? All of these things are coming, and there isn't a goddamn thing the mainstream can do about it anymore. There is nothing they can do to stop it. They are talking, even as we speak. They are yelling, as Walt Whitman says, the barbaric yacht across the rooftops of the world, and no one is fucking listening. Why do we know that? Who just screwed up in the UK election? Who just lost that mother? Theresa May. Right? Austerity's dying. Okay? Neoliberalism is dying. It's got a terminal illness now. It's called neoliberalism. That's it. It's got its own, it's given itself a terminal illness and it's going to die. And people hate it. Even though they don't know what it is, they can feel it. They can touch it. They can taste it. They can smell it. They just can't name it. And the reason why is because it permeates everything. It's everywhere. But there are people who know what it is. They know how it works. These people are called MMTists, whether they be economists, analysts, or just activists. These people know what it is. They have sharp, razor-sharp fangs because of MMT. And they're ready to sink those fangs into neoliberalism's neck. And they will bleed it out, and they will kill it. But how they do that is they want everybody to have these fangs. As many people as possible, you see. Not everybody, but as many people as possible to gain that critical mass that will cause that snowball effect. And those people who are sitting there going, oh, well, what about that 6%? When they feel that momentum and that revolution rising, they're going to forget 6%. They're going to forget all about that. And they're going to join in. A battle line will be drawn and neoliberalism will die. Its death is coming. We will win. I think Stephen Hale said last time he was on, he said that he will not stop until neoliberalism, until we win or he dies, okay? I will not stop, period, even if I die, because I leave my words behind me. I leave you behind me. I leave the people that I have taught behind me. I leave my wife and my children behind me, and I leave my writings behind me that will continue to speak for me. That's right. And then when neoliberalism finally dies, you can burn everything that I said, and you can forget me, because that's all I want. I just want to go back to like Cincinnatus. I just want to go back to my farm. Leave me alone. Please, leave me alone. But I can't. I can't. And the reason why I can't is because people are dying. And I, like other people, know what the solution here is. All right? And to further this point, as much as I'd like to go back to my farm, and be forgotten, I can't. And I can't talk about things that I really enjoy, like macroeconomics. Yeah? I can't talk about actual macroeconomics. I can't talk about why DSGE is hilariously silly and moronic and absolutely has nothing to do with reality. I can't talk about that because I still have millions of people who think that Social Security is running out of money. So until they all understand this, I have to keep talking about the simple things. But it would be nice to stop. You know that? It would be nice to stop and not have to do this anymore, because that would mean the solution has been achieved. Neoliberalism is dead. prosperity has emerged, and it will be sustained in perpetuity. And now I no longer have to worry about it. Until then, I'll keep fighting.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. I look out there, and I'll be honest with you, we have a small but committed group of ourselves. We've got great. Now, I want to say this to y'all, folks, and this is just tell you how much space real progressives, our broadcasts have started reaching, and how respected we are becoming. Last night, I was able to have a video conference call with none other than Dr. Bill Mitchell. Bill Mitchell is one of the OGs. He is the godfather of modern monetary theory in Australia. He, Stephanie, Warren Mosler, and Randy Ray, and of course Pavlina's even sort of in that mix as well. That group of people were instrumental. He and I spoke last night on the phone. He will be doing an interview. I owe him some dates. We're going to try and arrange a time where he can come on. Bill Mitchell is very supportive of our work. I was so thrilled. I'm telling you right now, every time I get to talk to one of the big dogs in this, this school of thought, every time I talk to one of the original guys, the gang, I really feel humbled in a way that words cannot express. I mean, my family watched me as I got off this photo call with Bill, and my hair was standing on end. I had goosebumps on my arms, and I'm not a fanboy. I just know what these individuals uncovered, and I know the heavy price they've each paid for trying to get this information out there to the world. And we continue to pay a heavy price as well, dealing with the nonsense. And folks, I got to be honest with you. If you pick up this mantle, and it's the mantle of truth, you will pay a heavy price as well moving this football forward.
You will. It's guaranteed. You're going to suffer. You're going to suffer for it. If you try and tell other people, if you go out there and try to spread a message of hope, you will pay the price for that. It's not a bed of roses. It's just not.
Oh, you know what? I left off Matt Forstater and
what about Matt
and Scott Fulmeiler.
Yeah, what's with you? What's with you?
I don't. Bill. I mean, I could go down the list. I mean, trust me, these names.
I mean, come on.
But bottom line here is that we have got. I'm loving the new crew with Rohan and Nathan and Raul and that whole gang from the Modern Money Network. I'm loving the UMKC team with Stephanie. And
don't
Scott.
forget, September comes the first international MMT conference in Kansas City. I think it's September, 24th? 21st to the 24th, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, we're looking at trying to figure out how we can get RP people there. But the reality is, and I just want people to understand this, there is academics, respected academics that talk about this stuff. Granted, they are fighting an uphill battle against the orthodoxy that lies to you and preaches death. And then there is a team of people who are professionals at the lawyer level who are trying to impact policy. And then you have us. We're the low man on the totem pole, folks. But we are a very essential part of this mix because we're out there teaching you. We're bringing you into the fold. We're getting you to activate. And, and I didn't say this, and I need to. We have Benzager Institute as well with Fidel and yes, Matt Forstater and others. I mean, there are so many folks. I shouldn't leave John Harvey out. I mean, John's a great professor. We've had him on the show out of TCU. There's a host of people, folks, that are really, really deeply enmeshed in this. Stephen Hale, wonderful man. We've got even the next gen in Ian Dooley, down in Australia as well. There are so many folks propping up. There's people in Canada. There's people in the UK. There's people in Japan. There's people all over the world.
There's Prue Plumridge. She's fought tirelessly to save the NHS and for this last Labour, this what I call a Labour victory. It was. It's 30 seats. Don't call it a defeat. Call it what it is. The Tories got the shit kicked out of them. All right? She's out there tirelessly working it, and working on Facebook, and others. There's Patricia Peanut over there, great Labour supporter, pushing forward Labour. These people are working tirelessly with MMT. taking that message out there to people. All right, it's a worldwide thing. Okay, it's not just something that happened that's just taking place in Erie, Pennsylvania, or over there in New York City. No, this shit. This has been around for a while, man, and it's all over the world. It's bigger than people think, and we are closer than we think. That's very important that we should mention that, because for years I've encountered people like this. As soon as they hear the message of MMT, suddenly they become hopeful. The light bulb goes on, they're hopeful, and then they suddenly say to you, oh, it seems like so many people just don't, nobody understands this. It's such a long uphill battle, and it's going to take forever. We have a long way to go. No, no, no. You've come in at the end of the game. We're already 3/4 of the way through the end of the game, to the end of the game yet, all right? You've come late to the game. We're almost done, all right? We're almost finished here. We're coming close to winning, all right? We haven't got far to go. So if you're new, be encouraged. Most of the hard fighting has been done already, all right? So have hope. Keep it too. Hold on to it, because there's a reason to hope. We're going to win. We are going to win. Yeah, and Stephen Hale's correct. Stephen Hale is correct. I have never disagreed with Stephen Hale, and I will continue to agree with him. My friend Stephen Hale is absolutely correct. We will win. Both he and I will fight this thing tooth and nail till we win or we're dead. And after I'm dead, my writings will continue, like I said, and so will Stephen's. They will just continue on until we win. Victory's coming. The end of neoliberalism is coming. There is no reason to despair anymore.
I want to throw one bone of hope out, and then we're going to close off, and that is the fact that there are Republicans out there who know this stuff, and we had one running for president come on this show, and Mike Norman.
Mike Norman told you how it works.
He broke it down, folks. So you may not like everything that a Republican says, but here's the truth. You got a guy right there who understands the need for healthcare, real healthcare, universal healthcare. You got a guy there who understands the need for the public purpose and rebuilding infrastructure the right way.
Right. You're not looking at a Republican. You're looking at a guy named Mike Norman.
That's right.
Well, that's the reality. That's the reality. It doesn't matter if it's R, D, P, Q, S. Fuck that. It's Mike Norman. He knows what he's talking about. He's telling you the truth. End of story.
That's right. That's right.
All you need to know.
That's right. We need to infiltrate everywhere. People everywhere, no matter what walk of life they are. You go down wherever they are, and you tell them there's hope, and you show them how we can do it, and we win. That's what I'm holding on to. So, all right, Ellis, thank you so much for this great show. Hopefully folks got something from this. I know I did. I'm sorry that we didn't have the extravagant broadcast where we could add images, because I had a bunch of fun ones to throw into this one. But BeLive was acting kind of silly tonight, so we took it just a one-on-one. But in any event, thank you all so much for your time. We will talk to you next week. Have a great one, y'all.